sleigh bells ringing. It's just a few days before that happens.
And it just seems that as we are here on the Senate floor talking.
Before I get in, could I ask the senator from Tennessee take this colloquy?
Without objection.
Thank you. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Dr. Bress.
Well, it just seems to me as we're here on the Senate floor discussing this issue, wide open, any American come in here, listen to us. Hidden behind closed doors is the other party, maybe sharing what's in the secret negotiations, maybe not, because it sounds like a number of their members don't know. But what I do know from practicing medicine for 25 years and taking care of families around the state of Wyoming is that people depend upon Medicare for their coverage. There are seniors who depend upon Medicare and Medicare Advantage. And the reason they call it Medicare Advantage is because there are advantages to being in it. It coordinates care. It helps with preventive care, which isn't part of the routine, the regular Medicare program. But I just heard my colleague from Arizona say that there are those who want to shut down Medicare Advantage, AARP, he said, because they are the ones to benefit and profit if, in fact, Medicare Advantage is lost to the seniors of this country. 11 million Americans depend on Medicare Advantage, and yet they are losing that as a vote that this body took. This body voted to strip $120 billion away from our folks who depend upon Medicare Advantage. And I know the senator from Arizona has another important point he wants to make.
The point I want to make, this process has turned into something, again, like I have never seen before. I was just handed this. Fox News just reported breaking news that Harkin said, I guess referring to the senator from Iowa, Senator Harkin said, that Medicare buy-in and public option are now dead. I don't know what to say, except it seems to me that they're just throwing everything against the wall and see what sticks and what doesn't stick. And this is really, again, one of the most astounding kind of situations that I have observed in the years that I have been here in the United States Senate. Medicare buy-in is dead. Public option is now dead. Whoa. What I'd like to see is that Harkin would report that now Republicans and Democrats will sit down together and try to work out something that the American people would heartily approve of.
I have great concerns about the health care availability for the people of our great country. I mean, this is a front page story in the Wyoming Tribune-Eagle on the 13th. Doctor shortage will worsen. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the patients at home. I'm worried about the folks in Arizona and Tennessee, Alabama. Doctor shortage will worsen. It's estimated that as many as 1/3 of today's practicing physicians will retire by 2020, and provider shortages will continue to increase. And it said that based on healthcare so-called reforms that they're proposing, the strain on certainly Wyoming's physician shortage even further, possibly leading to longer wait times for appointments as patients travel even further for care. So when I look at this bill that raises taxes $500 billion, cuts Medicare $500 billion, and causes people who already have insurance that they like, but they're concerned about the cost, see that the cost of those premiums going up. So there is very little in this bill that I think the American people would be interested in having for themselves. Now, the president's made a number of promises. He said I won't add a dime to the deficit. 80% of Americans don't believe him. Recent polls, CNN, 80% of Americans don't believe the president on that. How about taxes? And with taxes, he said they won't add a dime to your taxes. 85% of Americans don't believe him there. They believe their taxes are going to go up, but yet they don't believe that the quality of their care will be better. So when we talk about a bipartisan solution, we want to improve access to care. We want to get costs under control. This bill raises the cost of care.
The senator from Idaho is here. We both had the experience being governors, as did the presiding officer in her state of New Hampshire. But we were talking the other day, and I hope you don't mind me repeating that. I worked with the Democratic legislature the whole time I was governor, but what we always did on anything important was we sat down together, We had our different positions. We fought during elections. But we worked things out. And we didn't go forward unless we found a way to agree. And that meant I usually didn't get my way. I got some of my way, but I had to take into account that someone else, in this case the Democratic legislature in Tennessee, might have a different idea. Sometimes it was a better idea. And I would ask the senator from Idaho, we talk a lot about bipartisanship around here, but the reason for bipartisanship is that these big bills are tough bills. We're expected to make difficult decisions. Are we going to reduce the growth of Medicare? Are we going to expand Medicaid? Are people going to be required to buy insurance? What are we going to do about health care premiums? Many of these decisions are controversial, and when the American people look at Washington and they see just one side of the political spectrum is pushing a bill through and the other side says absolutely not, what kind of confidence is that going to give the American people? On the other hand, if they look at Washington, as they did in the civil rights legislation that we talked about in the 1960s, where Lyndon Johnson was president, a Democrat, and Everett Dirksen, a Republican, was the Republican leader, and they saw the Republican leader and the Democratic president saying, okay, this is a tough problem, but we have a solution that we both agree with, then the American people has some confidence in that. So bipartisanship is not just a nice thing. It's a signal to the American people that people of different points of view think a controversial decision is in the country's interest. And isn't that totally lacking here? Isn't that bipartisanship signal lacking across the country?
Senator, thank you, and I accept the yield. I am just astonished at the process that's involved here. I mean, if one steps back and has a look at this from 30,000 feet, and you look at what we're doing here, is, and I say we, it's actually the other side of the aisle, but what the other side of the aisle is doing here is they are attempting to entirely revamp the health care system of this country. And they're doing it all in one bill, which we think is a mistake. It should be broken into its component parts. But the bill contains and attempts to address quality, the cost, the accessibility, and the insurance industry, all put into one bucket and stirred and expected to resolve all of this at one time. If you look at what's happened here, the House produced 3 bills, multi-thousand-page bills. And those bills were stirred around over there, and eventually, in the dead of night, they finally got one of them passed with 1 or 2 votes to spare. And so then it came over here. There were already 2 bills over here. And the 2 bills were produced through the committee process. Now, the committee process is a very good process by which you produce bills. Admittedly, both of those bills were heavily skewed to the Democratic side. And all of the Republican amendments, or virtually all the Republican amendments, certainly all the significant amendments, were voted down on a party line basis. Well, those 2 bills came out of those committees, and one would expect that then it came to the floor and we would go through the process. But no, the 2 bills were taken over to the majority leader's office, the doors shut, the curtains closed, and various people were brought in. We don't know who, we don't know how, we don't know what the negotiations were. But at the end of the day, a 3rd bill over here was produced, and it's 2,074 pages long. It's usually kicking around here on the desks. I see they've removed most of them. I expect they probably removed most of them because I was afraid, and I think most people were afraid that it was going to fall over and hurt somebody. But these were 2,074 pages that were put together. Nobody really knows exactly what's in them. There are some generalities that we know, but we don't know all the specifics. So then what happens is a week ago, they decide, well, they'll put 10 people in a room, leave the rest of the 90 of us out, and they'll try to come up with some type of a compromise, and they did. And the next day, I got calls from home saying, well, I guess it's over. They've put out an announcement. There's been a compromise. It's done. It's over. And I said, well, you know, that's news to me, but I don't even know what's in it. Let me see if I can find out for you. So I start making calls. Nobody will release the details of what this supposed compromise is. Now, remember, in the last election, we were promised things were going to be different. There was going to be change that we could believe in, that these things were going to be done out in the open, without lobbyists coming and going and getting their input into the bill behind closed doors. But that's exactly what's been produced, is you have a secret document that has been produced that we haven't even seen yet. Now, in spite of all this, the other side is saying, by golly, we're going to produce a bill before Christmas time. Well, Christmas is coming, and Christmas is very close. But I can tell you, after looking at this 2,074 pages, not looking at the compromise because we're told we can't see it, it would be reckless, absolutely reckless, to shove down the throat of the American people something that has been put together in secret, something that's been put together in the dead of night, something that they won't let us look at and examine, and to say you're going to take this now and shove it down the American people's throat before Christmas time, this is not a Christmas present that the American people want. And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is look at the polling. The polling shows every single day support for this deteriorates. It deteriorates amongst Republicans, amongst Democrats, and amongst independents. The last poll was, I think, up to 61% of the American people said, don't do this to us. We need health care reform in this country. We want health care reform in this country. But this monstrosity that has been produced, and whatever it is that they're gonna drag out of the alley tomorrow and say is what we're gonna vote on now, is not what the American people want. I have a message for you on the other side from the American people. Don't do this to us. Stop. Bring some sanity into this. Do it right. Now, I yield the floor back to my good friend.
Madam President, may I ask the senator from South Dakota, unless the senator from Arizona wants to lead the colloquy.
The senator from South Dakota would just give me about 10 seconds.
Let me ask
here.
the senator from consent for the senator from South Dakota to lead the colloquy on the Republican side.
Very briefly, I'd say to my friend, apparently if the news reports are right that the public option and Medicare is out, that's an interesting twist. And again, I think affirmation, they're just throwing things against the wall to see if it sticks. But it doesn't change the core of the bill, which the senator from South Dakota has been so eloquent about, and that is $500 billion in cuts in Medicare and increases in taxes. So you take the public option in or out, it still doesn't change the fundamental fact that it's going to restructure health care in America and do nothing to reduce the costs and nothing to improve the quality. I just want to ask a comment from the senator from South Dakota. And by the way, could I just mention, I don't quite seen anything on the floor of the Senate, as I saw the senator from South Dakota challenged earlier today. I was watching proceedings on the floor.